Welcome to the next episode. So today we're going to look behind the buy and really delve into things in a bit more detail to give some sort of understanding about what actually happens that most people aren't aware of. So I think back to when Paul and I first sort of left education. We both got a couple of jobs for a couple of years, but then we set up a recruitment business. So one of our sort of mentors and people we looked up to is a guy called James Caan. For those of you that don't know, James Caan is somebody that was on Dragon's Den, was very big in recruitment, which was the business that we set up. And one of the things I definitely learned from James Caan was that he said every time you go through anything, whether it's a part of the process or the process from start to finish, is that you have to go back and analyze everything and think, what would you do differently and make yourself more equipped moving forward? So, Paul, I just wanted you to sort of start by telling us about why case studies are very important and very valuable in learning about M&A. So I think every time that you go through an acquisition, it's always going to be different. Yes, there are some things that are the same, but a lot must be, I think even now, 15 years on, you must still go, oh, didn't know that one. I've learned that today.
Yeah, so look, we've done over 100 deals over the past 15 or so years, and I say now, even at this point of all of those deals, every single deal will present a new learning opportunity, and whether it's finding out something new, finding a better way to do something in the process, for example. Maybe it's being more creative with the deal structure. And maybe it's even, you know, facing a challenge and how you navigated that challenge, or, with hindsight, look at you should have done something different. So I think, certainly what we do whenever we complete an acquisition is we get the whole team together and we chat through everybody's experience and involvement in that whole deal, and we pull out some key learnings. And really what we're looking to do is improve our own processes. If a deal was particularly challenging, how we dealt with those challenges, could we have done something different? Did we make any mistakes along the way, and what did we learn from that, and how will we make sure that we don't make that same mistake again? So we really do analyze every single deal that we do, to really enhance everybody's learning, and try and make the process more efficient, and walk away from those mistakes in the future. So yeah, hugely important. And equally, for as long as we own that business, we're always regularly meeting with the management team, the top team, and understanding the journey, the business, how it's growing, what the challenges are, so that we can, really bring our expertise to that, and try and help them. But also we're learning along the way too.
Okay. So could you share a story about one of your more high-level sort of overviews of a successful M&A deal that you've done, but also talk about the acquisition strategy behind that deal and what it was that made it successful?
Sure. So let me tell you about the most prolific acquisition journey that we've been on. So in the beginning of 2020, we got involved in the private hire taxi industry in the UK. So very fragmented market, over 10,000 small taxi co businesses in towns and cities across the UK. So very much an opportunity to consolidate. And we started working with a business owner in that space. He already had a successful taxi business in a major city in the UK, and he also saw an opportunity to go out and acquire others, and put companies together. And what he'd done is he developed his own technology. He had his own sort of back office infrastructure. So basically, it made the whole customer experience more efficient. There was less reliance on humans, if you like, because people could arrange taxis through apps. They could speak to a call center 24/7, etc., etc. And he also had landed some corporate contracts with, the National Health Service and local authorities. So effectively, what he saw was if he could buy another taxi business, he could plug into that technology, he could plug into that infrastructure, he could share that corporate contract, and he could see that with every acquisition he could make that business more successful because of all of those things. But he'd never been on that sort of M&A journey before. He's probably, somebody that is incredibly knowledgeable and entrepreneurial in the taxi industry, but M&A was perhaps something that wasn't, something that he had lots and lots of experience in. So we obviously partnered, and we went on that journey together. And 2 years later, he'd acquired 28 companies, so 28 taxi businesses in major towns and cities across the UK, and was very successful in growing all of those companies and making them more profitable profitable for all of those sorts of reasons. And we adopted many different deal structures because obviously 20 acquisitions, you don't do everything the same. And yes, we certainly use the leverage buyout structure in some. And we also there was also sort of like franchise type models as well. So there was lots of different creative deal structures that were applied to all of those acquisitions. But ultimately, it resulted in a much larger group and took a sort of seven-figure revenue business into eight figures.
Wow, incredible. So were there any major sort of challenges or obstacles that you faced with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I guess this is no different to most industries, if I'm honest. But I think it was very much, when you're talking to a business owner in that space, they're very, successful. They understand how to run a successful taxi business, but again, don't necessarily know sort of the whole M&A side of things. So there was very much a educational piece of sort of explaining to taxi company owners, how we were going to structure deals, why we were going to do it that way, what was going to happen with the business post acquisition in terms of some of the strategies that we had to grow the business. So it was very much an educational exercise. And I guess like with most SME business owners, they've got to trust that, you're going to be a good custodian of their business. Are you going to go in? Are you going to change the name? Are you going to reinvent the wheel? Are you going to fire people? And clearly, none of those things were our strategy. It was really about building upon what they've created and using their business as a base to grow. So we could plug in the additional technology. We could add in the corporate contracts to increase the business. One of the things that David, the founder, did was he created a sort of like a recruitment school for taxi drivers and almost got people to change careers and look at actually being a taxi cab driver as a good career opportunity. So he'd regularly go all around the country and host these sort of recruitment events so that he could basically get more drivers, because he knew that he could feed those drivers with more corporate jobs. We just needed the drivers to be able to deliver. So all of those sorts of things were going on sort of behind things as well. And obviously, as we went on the journey, we were able to demonstrate those things so we could actually showcase and provide that social proof to business owners that we were talking to about, well, look, in 2020 we acquired this business, this is what we did, this is where it is now. We could introduce them to other people that had been through the journey, so they could, it's not just us telling them what we're going to do, they can actually hear it from somebody that was in their position, which I think can be quite powerful. If you're interested in mergers and acquisitions, we have a free to join community of deal makers around the world where we share knowledge, expertise, deals, and joint ventures. I produce regular content there, and it's the first place that you can see it. So if you'd like to find out more about this and how we can joint venture together, I guess the vast majority of deals that we have done have been with joint venture partners. And I guess to get to 100 plus deals, there's only so many hours in the day. So by sharing the work with like-minded others, we can increase that bandwidth. So to learn more about this and to join our community, visit buybuildsellprogram.com.
Okay. So could you share a case study of a slightly different type of organization? So I think a lot of people in this space usually start with businesses that may be more distressed or need more help and support, sort of the turnaround, so to speak, type of acquisition, how that's worked, how you put the deal together, what the sort of problems were within it.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't tend to play too much in the sort of distressed space anymore. But if I wind the clock back to, I think, around about 2019, we got involved in the engineering industry, and we sort of fell into that industry more by accident, in that we had been approached by a business owner that had a very successful engineering company. But it had hit troubled times. It had basically had a couple of clients that had gone bust, which had hurt them badly, which then created some cash flow issues for the business. And he didn't really know how to navigate through that. So effectively, long story short, he went through an insolvency process to restructure the business, and then came to us I suppose, as a growth partner. How do we, now grow this business without those sorts of, financial challenges? And we basically went on M&A journey with him. So we acquired several other tactical engineering companies, good, well-run, profitable companies. But it was also, obviously he'd gone through an insolvency process, so we wanted to make sure he learned from that. How do we make sure that that doesn't happen again? So simple processes like who do we do business with? Do we credit check our clients? Do we hold credit insurance on our clients so that in the event of a client going bust again, it meant that there was insurance in place to protect against those sorts of risks, and being more picky about the sorts of customers that we were we're dealing with. So that's how we sort of turned, if you like, a distressed acquisition into multiple acquisitions, putting them together, driving those economies of scale, and ultimately creating more value for everybody concerned.
Okay. So what's been the impact of industry-specific factors on successful deals for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every industry is different, but I do say that business is business, and it doesn't matter whether you're selling widgets or you're selling some sort of business services. Ultimately the same principles apply. I say that it's about having great marketing because it creates then demand for your product or service, having robust sales processes so you can convert those leads, if you like, into paying customers, and having strong financial control, up to date MI that you can make proper decisions for the business on, and spot trends and spot problems obviously as they arise. So I think pretty much that is the same regardless of what the business is. And we've been involved in I think 32 different industries now. So I think we can say with some confidence that that's sort of in a nutshell how business works. But there are certain industries that will have certain nuances and challenges. For example, several years ago we were involved in the financial services industry where we were selling regulated financial products like mortgages. So you have to deal with the complexities of regulation, and changes to all of those sorts of things, and that can then present its own challenges, because with regulation becomes additional workload, becomes potential bureaucracy, and you have to be able to navigate and deal with those things.
Interesting. So with your program, Buy, Build, Sell, I think a lot of people are quite interested in the middle parts of that, the building part. So I think when building companies, I think what you generally teach people is to try and find a platform business as your acquisition and build around it. But can you sort of talk about examples where I suppose the synergies really kick in and create that extra value when you are building a group?
Yeah, so I think there's two types of acquisitions that you can make. One is a tactical acquisition, and another would be a more strategic acquisition. So a tactical acquisition might be buying a competitor to increase ultimately the revenue and profitability of the group, and then you can pull out those things like economies of scale, buying power. There's duplicated head office functions, potentially consolidating some of those things, etc., etc. Or you could make a more strategic acquisition where maybe, if you're a manufacturing business, potentially controlling more of the supply chain, for example, we were involved in the food industry, so we owned a fresh produce company. We ended up acquiring a competitor, so that was our tactical acquisition. But we then bought the transport company, so that was more of a strategic, because it gave us more control over the supply chain, effectively improved our margins, and basically we were able to deliver more quicker for our customers, which obviously had a meaningful impact on the bottom line.
Okay. And how about the sort of smaller end of things? I appreciate this might have been longer ago in your sort of history of doing things, but a smaller acquisition that maybe turned out to be incredibly successful or just, very highly profitable?
Yeah, so I mean, there's not wanting to repeat what we've already spoken about, but I think the working in the taxi industry was a bit of a whirlwind. 28 acquisitions in 2 years. We obviously learned a lot as we went through that, and David was very, very focused on improving those businesses and very much took the whole people side of things very, very seriously. I think I do say that the most important people in a business is the staff. You look after the staff, staff, they'll look after your customers, and everything else will go accordingly. And I think that, we have a very big ethos on the whole sort of people side of things, and that's very much what we're looking at and focused on when we're looking at sort of acquisitions.
Okay. What are the biggest factors that are contributing to that post-acquisition success in deals?
Say that again, sorry.
What are the biggest factors that sort of contributed to the post-acquisition success that you found in deals? So when you've taken over, what is it that really drives it to be that extra sort of success? I mean, I think you touched on with that particular one, having like almost academies to find more drivers, things like that are great things that people can implement into their businesses.
Yeah, so I think what we see in the whole SME space, generally, is that most business owners that run these companies probably reach a certain level, and then they don't have the ambition to grow it any further because, look, as you grow, that becomes more challenges. You're going to have to hire more people. How do you hire those people? How do you manage them? You're going to take on more customers. More customers potentially can give you potential more problems. So a business owner can get to a point where they're just content with what they've got and they don't want to sort of keep going on that growth journey because, they don't want the hassle. Maybe they're at a time in their life where they want an easier life rather than a more difficult one. So what we see then is that's an opportunity that, in a well-run SME that is, consistently profitable but not really growing, is, how do we bring our own expertise in sales and marketing to improve the business, grow it organically? How do we expand the business? How do we give that sort of, management team that we'll acquire as part of that transaction greater opportunity, and help them smash through that glass ceiling? It can be quite refreshing for a lot of staff that, work in an acquisition that we're involved in, because they're excited by growth. They've seen a business possibly stagnate a little bit, and then here are some people that are coming along to say, actually, we want to go and grow both organically and through acquisition. We want to create a bigger group. Obviously, that then creates bigger projects, bigger career opportunities, and all of those things can be quite inspiring for people to go on that journey, and sort of almost like taking the handcuffs off them, and giving them the freedom to, within reason, to go out and grow.
Okay. So I'd imagine, every company is different, but for the companies that have been long established in their sort of trading, probably come with quite a loyal customer base. Does that have impact on, I suppose, one, the deal in the first place, how it's put together, but also the success of the deal? Because I think there's two parts to that question. Does it influence how the valuation might sort of stand? But also after the acquisition, a lot of customers that have, if you've been a customer of somebody for 20 years or whatever, and that person is no longer in the business, that could cause a lot of problems as well. And also suppliers, I would imagine.
Yeah, so there are a couple of companies that we've been involved in where they've had a very high reliance on one or two customers. I mean, there was one business where 90% of its revenue was derived from one customer, another one where I think it was 65% of the revenue was derived from one customer. So, from a deal perspective, that's very high risk because, if most of your business is coming from just one customer, if that customer then decides to go and do business somewhere else, for whatever reason, maybe they don't like the new ownership, then potentially overnight you can end up with no business. So it's very important that that's considered in a deal. Would it put me off doing a deal? No, but I guess what we've learned from that is to really look at the terms of the contract with that customer, the relationship, and trying to build in and mitigate the risk of that customer going somewhere else. So I think it's very, very important that it's considered, but it certainly wouldn't put me off doing a deal. But in the vast majority of companies that we get involved in, it tends to have a good customer spread. So it's a bit more diverse. So if you lose a customer, all your eggs aren't in one particular basket, for example. But it's very much about making sure that there's a plan for a handover. So working with the business owner, A, to understand the business, and B, to protect that goodwill. So really getting into the relationships with staff, customers, key suppliers, other stakeholders, so that they see that it's still the same people running the business. We continue to deliver for those customers or suppliers, and that business owner is still around for a handover period, until we're basically got to grips with the business and understand it and have sort of taken over that relationship.
I can imagine having just one or one of your main, I don't know, a large customer that takes up a lot of your revenue being quite exciting for a business owner and also very scary of how that could be impacted. But going through the due diligence process, do you rarely sort of come across things that are completely unexpected, things you hadn't planned for, or even thought would be something to take into consideration?
Yeah, I think traditionally and the sort of perception, I guess, of due diligence is that buyers use this to, basically chip the price and renegotiate the deal after it's been agreed. And nothing could be further from the truth from our perspective. The due diligence really is twofold. Number one, it's really an educational exercise for us, so we actually understand the business and its business model and how it operates. So diving into a lot of detail to understand that, it almost gives us a bit of a heads up so that when we do make the acquisition, we're going in with our eyes open because we've looked at pretty much everything within the business and we really understand the business model and how things work and any associated risks with the deal. And secondly, it's quite simply it's to I suppose sense check that actually we want to do this deal. Of course, in the vast majority of deals that we do, there'll always be something that will crop up in due diligence that potentially is a problem or a risk. But it's how you mitigate that, how you mitigate that risk and get comfortable with it. So we certainly don't use the due diligence process to chip the price. If anything, if we found something that was a real red flag and problem, we basically just wouldn't go ahead with the deal and we'd withdraw from the process. And that doesn't happen very often because typically we are sourcing well-run, profitable, well-established companies in the industries that we want to be involved in. So, before we even have that first conversation with a business owner that's contemplating selling, we know that we're only looking for those companies that meet that financial profile, and have been established for a certain period of time, have been consistently profitable, because those sorts of businesses tend to be a lot lower risk, and the due diligence process really is to just ratify that consistent performance is consistent and will continue to be and consistent moving forward. So there are obviously buyers out there that do use that due diligence process to look for problems and then use that to justify a lower purchase price, but that's certainly not our model.
Okay. So just to bring things to a close today, I mean, if somebody could consume your 15 years worth of knowledge and all the ups and downs that you've had over the last sort of 15 years, what would be the biggest takeaways that people could take from the successful deals that you've had? But also, not everything goes to plan. There are deals that, probably your biggest learning curves, I imagine, when they don't work out the way that you want them to do. But what would be those biggest takeaways for people?
For me, I think probably one of the most important things to say is actually some of the best deals that you can do are the ones that you don't do, that you walk away from. There's loads of deals out there. There can always be a tendency to, overpay for a business or turn a blind eye to certain things in a due diligence process, because you just want to get that deal done. But, if you go ahead and do that deal, you've got to then be able to deal with the potential challenges that those risks present. So I do say that sometimes it is better to walk away from a deal rather than doing a bad deal. I think it's really important too to have, a clear plan, and goals both for, the first acquisition, but, if you're going to go on a journey and do multiple acquisitions, setting out those goals, not trying to run before you can walk, having a logical plan. I think are all very, very important. Being able to be flexible and adaptable. Yeah, there's always things around the corner that we didn't expect. We acquired a business, for example, in the leisure industry, in 2020, and just before the global pandemic, and literally within weeks of taking over, we couldn't trade. We had to close. We had to lock down. Revenues went from sort of 3 million a month, literally down to tens of thousands, but we still had 70 staff to pay. And obviously nobody expected that. We didn't see the pandemic coming. So there's always unexpected challenges, but I'd say try and face them head on, and try and do as much due diligence as possible so that you basically don't have those unexpected challenges. And I think, every deal, successful or not, is always an opportunity to learn, and refine those skills. And, certainly if you're new to this, haven't done deals before, or don't have much experience, I would very much recommend having a mentor or a coach, somebody that has got that expertise, that have made those mistakes, that, ultimately you can learn from.
Okay. Now, I was going to wrap it up there, but there was just one further question that came to mind. Do you think you would have been as successful as you have been if you hadn't had the mentors that you've had? So I'm aware of some of the people that have mentored you from an early age, but without those, do you think the journey would be the same, or do you think you'd be doing something completely different?
I think without mentors and people that have been successful that you can learn from, I'm not saying that somebody can't go out there and create success and be successful at doing these sorts of things. Um, but I go back to that analogy I used before. When you want to learn to drive a car and pass your driving test, you don't try and self-teach yourself. You hire an instructor and you practice, you pass your test, and the more times you drive the car, the more experienced you become and probably become a better driver from it. But also, you can create bad habits as well, that then can fester and actually not make you a good driver. So having people around you that have been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, I think is very important. I remember, back to our startup recruitment business, we'd worked in the real estate industry. We spotted an opportunity to build a specialist recruiter for the real estate industry, and we went into this startup recruitment business with absolutely no experience whatsoever of working in the recruitment industry. And we thought, yeah, we can see an idea and we can turn it into a business. Little did we know, it wasn't about all the fluffy HR stuff of meeting people and having interviews with people. Is probably one of the toughest sales jobs you can do, because your product is people, and all of those people have opinions. So you can find the best candidate in the world and you can send them for a job interview, but they can just say one thing that could put that person off hiring them. So we played around a little, didn't we, for 6 months or so, and we thought we could create a business, and clearly we had no idea, and we found somebody that had built a very successful multi-million-pound recruitment business, and we paid him to basically coach us and show us the right way to do things rather than the wrong way. And it wasn't as much about the processes that we learned from him, but it was also some of the mistakes that he made when he was growing his business, that he was basically able to say, look, you don't want to go down that path because I did that and this is what the result was. Actually try and do it this way. And that could be really quite powerful, and I suppose accelerate the journey, rather than playing around thinking what you can do, is actually work with someone that's been there and done it and can guide you through that process. Do a few deals with them, and then maybe you can go on your own, or continue.
Yeah, I think we might have to do a whole episode on mentors because it's a massive topic of conversation, because I think you can have mentors in every avenue of your life, quite frankly, and it's the best way to move forward and progress, because you can literally consume all their years of knowledge without having to live their own journey, a bit like how you can acquire a business without having the 20 years worth of running the business.
I mean, we did M&A, didn't we, for 5 years, thinking that we knew how to do it, and little did we know. And I think we did, was it 6 deals in that 5 year period? But we then found a master deal maker, been very, very prolific, and since we sort of engaged with that individual as a mentor, we've done 95 plus deals. Which is in a much shorter time period. So yeah, having those people around you, I think, is completely invaluable.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's wrap it up there, but thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks. See you on the next episode. Can I ask you a favor? If you like this content, then please do subscribe to the channel to receive more content like this as we upload it. It helps our channel and shares the message with like-minded deal makers. It also helps me to connect with our audience and bring you more content that you can watch.